Hi everyone, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I'm making a video for you today for a sewing machine that is actually not mine. It belongs to a client who has asked me to take a look at it to consider a possible overhaul for the machine. Now, I have worked on many machines, many different brands. This machine particularly comes in a carrying case that you see here. And it has that two-tone look, and if you guessed that it was from the 50s, 1950s, you would be correct. So I will show you, behold, the Windsor straight stitch sewing machine. Sometimes many of you will come across machines and they will have names you don't recognize. And I've shown quite a few of these in the videos that I've made over the years. And one of the reasons for this is that there were a lot of sewing machine manufacturers in the vintage era, but not that many. The reason you see so many different brands is that you had a lot of companies who would make machines for other, for retail outlets as a private label. One of the most famous, of course, at least in North America, would be Kenmore, which of course was a private label brand for Sears. Sears or Sears Simpsons, depending on whether you're in the US or Canada. But the point is, Kenmore never manufactured anything. They had things manufactured for them. Now, imagine that you just came across this machine. Maybe you found it in a thrift shop. I need to ask the owner where they found it. I haven't even gotten a chance to ask them yet. Well, how do you know it's a Japanese machine? Well, there's a couple of things. First, a lot of the machines from the 1950s, if they don't say Singer or White or one of the legacy brands that you might know of that have been that were in production for generations, then you might you might want to you might be making a good guess if you said this is one of those Japanese machines. This is called a Japanese clone. Now the term clone can be used for either a zigzag capable machine or a straight stitcher, which is what this particular machine is. Has a little reverse lever here that you can use for back tacking. Has stitch length control, which I'm not going to turn because it is stiff. And all of you know, you've heard my little lecture on don't touch that dial. If it's stiff, then, and many of them are, but there are access screws to this panel. I'm going to need to go back here. I'm going to need to clean and lubricate that to make sure that it can work properly. Again, it's not broken, but it sure can be if you try to strong arm and wrestle with it because, again, it's been sitting a long time and it needs service. It has a bobbin winder on the front. I hear that nice click. I can tell that the spring for the bobbin winder is strong. This, I'm going to guess, is a replacement bobbin tire. It feels nice and rubbery and no cracks. I suspect this was replaced at least once in its life, if not more times. The machine is covered in dust, and it looks like some kind of pet hair. I don't even know what that is. But that's common, all right? Nothing unusual about that. It's been sitting a while. The box is a little musty, but that's nothing some sunshine can't take care of. Now, I'm going to kind of go very quickly with you guys. I want you to kind of watch some of the things that I'm looking for. Okay, it's not the dust and stuff. That's common. That doesn't concern me at all. What can we look at? Well, the first thing I notice, I don't know if you noticed it, but the spool pin where you put your top thread is awfully squatty and short. Many of the machines from this era that were made in Japan had basically they adopted older designs mechanically. This is a class 15 copy. That's why they're called clones. And you'll know because, of course, the Singer Company invented the class 15 machine, and you know those because they have the upper tension dials on the left side. That's where they're mounted. It's one of the, I'd say the Singer 15 was the most copied machine in history. Even the German company Pfaff also made a copy of it. So the Japanese would take expired patents and they would start making machines. And they made a few changes and upgrades. They made a few improvements. But pretty much mechanically, down here, If I zoom in there, I don't know how visible this is for you, but you will see a class 15 bobbin case. And it uses class 15 bobbins. Again, this is a system that Singer invented, but patents don't last forever. And let's see, what else to tell you? This machine is very much like the two-tone gray and white model that I showed. I think I used that one in my troubleshooting series. It's two-toned, but there's no removable lid. This is all monocoque, which is just a fancy word for one piece. This is one giant slab of cast iron. It is very heavy, and that's a good thing. Now, back to this spool pin that I was mentioning. The Japanese wanted to, make some changes to the old designs, and so you have bright colors. It's two-tone, not unlike many things in the 50s. And the spool pin was designed to be retractable. And there's a lever here you would push, and as soon as you did, a spring would pop it up. And it was, I think it was more of a gee whiz, feature than anything else. I don't know why they had to do this. It's not going to make that much difference in the clearance of the machine under the cover, but regardless, that's what they did. And many of them did this. Now, this is a one piece. You think, how am I going to get to this? Because if this is going to work, I've got to get to it, I've got to clean it, I've got to lubricate it and see if I can adjust it and make it work again. Fortunately, there is space to access this machine. On the back side, there's a panel here with a set screw. There's also a small set screw right underneath this retracting spool pin. So that's one of the first things that I am going to take a look at, because if I cannot fix this, I don't want to go through everything else if I can't get a pin. There are ways to set threads up for a machine on a spool holder and all this, but I really want to know this before I delve into the rest of the machine. Now, what else do we need to look at? Things that I will ask the owner, questions. In addition to the spool pin, which I should be able to figure out pretty quickly if I can remedy this. I think I can, but you never say, always go into this with humility so you don't overpromise. But anyway, that's my first guess. But let's look at some other things. The motor. The motor looks original. It is color-coded to match the body. It was not made in Japan. Back in the 50s, the Japanese were not producing American or North American specified electricals. So the whole head, or the big body and chassis of the machine, would be imported, and as soon as it got to the West Coast, they would upfit it with foot pedals and motors and plugs and so forth. And it's kind of funny because I'm not sure if the motor and the foot pedal and obviously the machine was made in Japan, and in these days, I don't know if they were using computers to match colors. I think they were just using something more rudimentary. So these are all fine. They coordinate, but there's, if we were going to be real picky, the colors are slightly off, and that's just because they were made by different companies, and they said, hey, we want this metallic blue, and I think they just got as close as they could. But that has nothing to do with the function of this machine. I am happy on the motor. I see brush access. That's very useful. I do not see a little lubrication port for the bearings, and I'm very surprised because this machine was made in 1958, and I will show you in just a minute how I know exactly the year it was made. What else to mention? This motor is rated at 0.5 amps, and I was a little surprised to see that. The majority of machines made in Japan usually came with 0.75 as a starter, 3/4 of an amp, and then 1 amp was very common. Occasionally you might see more than that, sometimes even 1.5 on a few of them. But a 1/2 amp is fairly low in power rating, which again is surprising. Doesn't mean the motor was bad quality, but I will ask the owner, what kinds of materials do they anticipate sewing with this machine. I think this machine will sew up a storm and do just fine for any number of projects. If it's going to be anything really heavy, then they might want to consider either a different machine altogether or replacing the motor with a different one. So again, these are questions, not assumptions on my part, but things I like to ask. Now, let's take a look down here. I should mention that I have not plugged this machine in, and I am not going to, because I always want to inspect a machine before I even think about plugging it in. As I mentioned in my other videos, if you try to run a sewing machine and it's not been, let's say it's frozen up or it's very stiff, you can damage parts because it's not been cleaned and lubricated. So you really want to inspect it before you start plugging in and go into town with it, because you really need to kind of assess its condition. Now, I'm going to move the camera a bit here, and I'm going to show you another reason why I haven't plugged the machine in. One of the things I did was I went to inspect the cord. Now, this machine uses what almost every Japanese-made machine and many others used, which is it's a double lead electrical cord with a dual outlet. Now, I have showed all of you before when you are plugging in and using these types of outlets that I think you can see down in there, get a little bit of, you can see this is the original. This is for the light and this is for the motor, and they are marked as such, but you have to look closely because they didn't paint the letters. You cannot cross wire these. If you do, you will confuse the machine, it will not run properly, and you could potentially damage it. But all you have to do, if you can't see it, just shine a little flashlight and you'll know which is which. Some of these have never been undone. So, I noticed a couple of things about this. Normally, the cords were black, and they were black on both ends, but this one is not. We've got different colors of electrical cord. That tells me somebody has, at some point, rewired something. I mean, that's as good as I can, explain it at this point. Now, let's start with one end. I've got this end. This is clearly not an original plug. I can tell it is a replacement. This cord, however, let me show this to you guys. And again, I'm not flattening the cord, but just putting it in a curve like this. And when I bend in the light, I can start to see cracks here. Okay, there's one right there. What does that mean? The wires themselves typically just, they sit and do their thing, but it's the insulation or the jacketing around the wires in a cord that can create issues. This is a hazard for both your safety and the machine's. So let's keep following. We'll follow the cord. Parts of it, it's kind of weird. Parts of it look smoother than others, and you'll see some cracks here. It looked black, but notice when I bent it, there it is, right? You can see the insulation is just dry rotted. It's, that if anything is going to rot on a machine, it's going to be the plastic or the vinyl or the rubber parts. Now, take a look. At some point on the cord, the two sections of the cord, the two wires, they have insulation, but they're split apart. And this looks like it was split apart by someone, and they were joined. Someone connected or spliced the cord, and there's a lot of electrical tape wrapped around here. As all of you know, I do not use electrical tape. It is not a permanent repair. It is vulnerable to heat and cold, and it will come unraveled, and I don't use it. I don't like it. Okay, now I finished with that little soapbox. I'll keep following. Now, as the cord gets closer to the box end, I'm really seeing large chunks of breaking here, and the cord is a goner. We gotta, that cord and outlet, the whole cord is going to need to be replaced. Now, another giveaway that the cord has been altered in the past is, I don't know if you guys saw, but the part of the cord that goes to the foot pedal, well, it's brass, sort of gold colored, and it's twisted. It almost looks like lamp cord, and in fact, I think it is lamp cord. And the problem is not that they used lamp gauge cording, which is very similar to the rest of the machine, a little different, but I can tell that this, if you look down in here, it has been rewired. Okay? Now, that's what we know about the cord. Now, I'm going to move the camera and we're going to talk about the motor Okay guys, we're on the back of the machine, back side. I'm going to zoom in and I want you to take a look. This is the cord that plugs into that outlet. Remember, there are two. There's one that goes to the light of the machine and the other goes to the motor, and there it is. Now, let's see if, there we go. I don't know if that helps with the light situation. When you're dealing with a machine of this age, one of the things you want to look at is where this cord bends, because remember, that cord is bent at a pretty sharp angle, and it's years. It spends years in that position, and it can put stress on it. Let's see. I have not taken the machine out, but or taken the motor off, but I will. And when I do, I'm going to be looking right here, and I don't know. This cord doesn't feel particularly brittle. It seems to bend okay, but I want to see this. And there's also a nice rubber grommet down there. But again, why do I think that the motor was rewired? Because I have a suspicion that it was. Well, here's why. Let's take a look at the other cord and plug. This one is blue, and it has a name on it. It says Okusen. It looks Japanese. I suspect this is original. Most of the time, if you ever find these machines with their original cords, both of the cords are the same color. Not the power cord with the outlet, but this is the cord from the light, and I noticed that the plug end of the motor cord it's a different shape. It's black. It's not even in the same style, and originally it would have had the same style plug. So I believe the motor has been rewired. I believe the light has not. Now the light cord is stiff, but it's not cracking. It still seems to be sound, if you will. Okay, I don't see any crumbling insulation here. So what this tells me is that the machine has been rewired over its life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I have no idea who did it. Was it done by a sewing machine dealer, perhaps? Or it could have been done by, someone's next door neighbor who said they thought they could try it. We don't know. And so these are things I want to share with the owner and get their opinion on before I begin any work. By the way, I should mention, this is the belt. I slipped this belt off. This is the belt that's on the machine. Now, this is not a belt that I use. This is a stretch. It's called a stretch belt, okay? And if I pull on it, it stretches like a big rubber band. These are generic belts, and they were created so that sewing dealers didn't have to stock all the different sizes. You put it on machines. You can get like a 3-pack, and they are flexible in terms of being able to fit different setups with different machine brands and different lengths between the hand wheel and the motors. The problem with these is that, if you're riding a bicycle and you have a metal chain, you know that there's a transfer of power from your legs to the wheels. What happens if your chain is made of rubber? You lose a lot of the power is lost in the stretching of the belt. And so I personally would not use this. I would use one of the lugged belts that are easily available, and they're not particularly expensive. I think I can get one for this for, $8 or something, $9, depending on what I pay to have it shipped. But I saved the best for last because I want to show all of you something. If any of you have seen my videos from either my cabinet videos or when purchasing machine videos, I'm not even sure which videos I put this in, but I always mention to you, when you're looking at a machine, always remember to ask the owners if there's any sewing stuff that goes with it. You can also look in the drawers of any table it might come with, and if the machine comes in a carrying case like this one does, always take a peek underneath. You don't know what you're going to find under there. And it's really helpful if you can do this with more than one person, because you cannot, let me pan up so you can see what I'm doing. You can't let this machine just flop back and rest. It'll go rolling and it'll pull the whole case with it. This thing is very heavy. So I really recommend you have a friend with you who can hold this while you snoop around down here in the little storage section. Now sometimes, a lot of times what you'll find here is fairly common. You will see, I see a bobbin. I see two bobbins. One of them goes to the machine, which is this one, the class 15. And here's a class 66 bobbin. It doesn't even belong in here. It doesn't even go to this machine. But, you know, people who sewed would be given things, and, you know, they didn't always care where they stored them. They may have had more than one machine. Here is a package of rubber motor belts. These are the stretch belts that I don't use. And inside there is a tiny, that actually may be a bobbin tire. Maybe it came as a kit. Here's an older tire. It doesn't look all that bad. Not sure what that's in there. There's thread, there's needles. And if you're fortunate, you will find in the machine a manual. Many of these manuals, if you're looking for a Singer, you can get PDFs online. But for a lot of these clone machines, they made so many different label brands that getting a manual to one of these machines is not always easy. And this one is here. So whoever owned this kept all their sewing stuff, at least for this machine, in here as far as I can tell. And now we know it was called the Model M27. Notice it doesn't have the brand on the manual, and that's because this manufacturer was probably building machines very similar to this, but with different names. And so they could just print one manual and put it with all the different private labels. So I think that's what they were doing there. And if you're really lucky, and I do mean this is rare, folks, I think I'm almost at 200 machines that I've bought and restored and found owners for. Only 3 or 4 times in the 9 years have I ever found this. This is the guarantee, and it's actually on the other side is a receipt showing when this machine was purchased. Sometimes you'll find records of service. You know, you'll find like a receipt for having the machine serviced. But this machine has, and I'm going to read this to you. It says your guaranteed bond. You have a guaranteed bond, and it has a name and an address for where the machine was purchased, and then it has the purchaser and the address, and it gives the, you know, it has the machine and so forth, the serial number, and it says, let's see if I can show this. I don't think this will show up on the camera. January 14th, 1958. This is the date, guys. Look at that. January 14th, 1958. This is this card would have been filled out the day it was bought. And so now we know exactly how old this machine is. Very cool and very unusual to have that. You know, stuff like this, you know, how many of us think we're going to have receipts for stuff we bought in 60 years from now? So again, this is a really good example of the type of things you'll find when you're coming across an old sewing machine. So if you find one of these machines and you say, what the heck is a Windsor? I've never heard of one. It doesn't mean it's not a good machine, right? It actually is a very well-made machine. It's just there's not much information about them. They don't bring the same prices that something like a Singer or one of the European brands might. But it can be a very strong worker for you. You definitely want to check it out and make sure that it has all of its thread guides. You know, I do this with every machine. I did that with the little necky I have, and one of the reasons it's taken so long to get the necky repaired is because I've been trying to find a thread guide that it's missing. If you're missing a thread guide, you're going to have a lot of problems with machines. But let's see if I can show you my quick little rundown. Here's my spool pin. I start looking for the first thread guide. That's normal. It normally comes on the back left of the machine. And then your thread, of course, would come down around the tension assembly. It picks up its check spring. And by the way, always look to see if you have a check spring. If you have a Singer, you can get replacements for many of them. With these machines, it's a little trickier, but this one has its check spring. It seems bouncy. It doesn't seem broken as far as I can tell, a little stiff. And it's going to, and then your thread's going to rest here after it hits the check spring. It then will come up back up to the take-up arm, and then it comes down into this thread guide. There's one more thread guide here, and then it's going to thread from the left to the right. Now I noticed something. I was feeling around here, and the groove of the needle is actually not where I expect it to be. It is actually sitting on the right side. Now, one of two things is true. Either this machine has had its needle inserted wrong, and if someone was trying to thread it from the right to the left, which there are only a few Singer models that do that, even most Singers don't thread this way. If they did that, that could explain why somebody gave up on the machine and said, well, this machine's broken, it doesn't work. I don't know that, but I'm guessing, because every one of these machines, at least the Japanese clones that I have seen, they do not thread from the right to the left. But if I look in the manual, it will confirm it for me. But I'm willing to bet that this needle is in backwards and it should be turned around, because the flat side faces the direction of the threading, and then the groove is behind, right? But that's not really a problem mechanically. That's more of just a troubleshooting issue. So there you go, guys. That is the 1958 Windsor two-tone straight-stitched Singer 15 class clone. I can't believe I said all of that in one sentence, but that's what you're looking at here. And again, this is very common. I have seen machines that had, again, I have one right now that says Eaton, and it's not an Eaton. It was made by the brother company in Japan, but the reason it says Eaton is because it was sold in the Eaton department store, which was a chain of department stores in Canada. And again, a lot of the stores had their own name put on machines. But again, great quality, definitely heirloom quality, built of all metal, heavy, pretty heavy machine here. I mean, it's pretty heavy. But again, this is my initial diagnosis, and again, I haven't plugged the machine in, and I don't really know, I won't know the condition of the motor and whether it's even alive until I plug it in. But of course, I can't do that unless I put a new cord on it, because I'm not gonna, I just don't want to take the chance I could damage the motor, or it could damage me if I try to run anything. It doesn't matter what it is, you should never use anything with a cord in that type of condition. It's just silly, right? So I'll talk to the owner and see what she has to say. And one last thing, you will know you have a Japanese clone if you have a machine, guys, and look for a badge. You will often see it on the front down here. Sometimes it's on the inner section, and you will see the following words. It will say either Deluxe, Super Deluxe. I believe this one says Super Deluxe. For reasons I cannot fully comprehend, all of the Japanese manufacturers, virtually all of them, would use a certain number of words repeatedly, and it didn't matter which brand, which manufacturer it was. You see words like deluxe, precision, and again, somebody must have gone over there and given them marketing advice and said, hey, North American consumers really like these words, because they use them repeatedly. And I think it's kind of funny. And they are great machines. They are built with great precision, and they are, the word deluxe is kind of a, it's an anachronism today. Very few companies use it and when they're trying to describe something. But once upon a time, deluxe must have meant something. And, I think somebody was giving the Japanese manufacturers marketing advice. But anyway, it's just a cute little part of the time capsule of all of this. You got your two-tone paint scheme, and even the carrying case is two-tone. But great quality. And like I said, as long as everything is there, finding trim parts and control parts can be very difficult for these machines, unlike something like a Singer. But as long as everything is here, it really shouldn't be a problem, because needles and bobbins, things like that, are easy to get. And again, we'll do a little more diagnosis and diving in once I get to kind of look at the motor and ask the owner again, is this motor one that they want to keep and use? And it's all going to depend on the type of material they want to sew. But this machine can definitely be brought back. It can be made to sew like new again. and it's a straight stitcher. It's an old Ironsides, and it should have a lot of life left in it. It just is probably, well, not probably, it is going to need a new cord, possibly a new foot pedal, because again, I haven't opened this up yet. I need to know who, I don't know how this was wired, and I don't like not knowing. So it might be worth putting on a new electronic foot pedal, which can easily be done, and even possibly a new motor. So again, the owner will tell me and guide me in the way they want to go. But thought I would share this with you. It's again 1958, so it's 60 years old, right? It's almost old enough to retire. So thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate your tuning into the channel. And if you have any questions, or if you have a Windsor of your own, let me know. And I will see you on the next video. Take care.